Welcome into episode 2 of Sportslandia, brought to you by the Next Professional Athlete Network. Brian Slyke, Ray Bradley here, bringing in another weekly episode of the sports talk around the U.S. right now.
Indeed.
Some very interesting stories happened this week. Last week we kind of focused mainly on baseball at the beginning and then pushed more towards football, but too much exciting stuff happened, at least in the Portland area in the NBA scene. Damian Lillard getting traded this past week to the Milwaukee Bucks. I think everybody was sort of shocked about that. I think the last few, maybe like 10 days or so, there were rumors of certain teams that were involved. I heard the Bulls at one point. I heard the Raptors were leading.
You didn't really hear the Bucks, though. Yeah, you're right. It wasn't even like it felt like a dark horse potential. It just happened.
It just sort of happened, yeah. I think so much was put on Miami being the trade destination because that's what Dame wanted.
Yes.
Which I have another situation I want to talk about with that, and we'll go back to that in a minute. But
sure.
The trade with Milwaukee, I think, stellar move for them. I think you bring in a high-volume scorer. You now have somebody like Giannis who can attack you in the paint. You've got Lillard for three, and then you got Chris Middleton as your mid-range threat.
The two of them, the two top players there, it feels like they just complement each other so well. They do what the other doesn't. Like you said, offensive threat from the perimeter with Dame and defensive threat from the interior with Giannis. It's like that's kind of what you want. If you're making a little NBA Jam team with just two guys, it's like those guys check all the boxes individually. Like so, I like it for them a lot.
Yeah, the only, you could say, downside is losing that defensive ability from Jrue Holiday and how big of an impact he made for that team, the defensive aspect on the perimeter. I mean,
yeah. Even the playmaking that he did within the finals, that alley-oop, the famous alley-oop on that run, like that I think is going to be where the bones of this trade kind of comes down to, whether or not it works out for them, because you're getting Dame, you're getting that huge offensive talent, but yeah, the trade-off and losing Jrue and all that kind of team chemistry they built up with that team, it's going to be interesting to see how they do that. But I am just kind of glad that it was another small market that he went to.
Right.
Like, part of me kind of loves that as a small market team here, that we could send him to another one and keep it kind of rolling. You know, he didn't go to a New York or a Miami or certainly not LA. So,
yeah.
A little excited by that. And, yeah, pretty great return by the Blazers, too, to not take this little hero with a couple bad first trade from Miami and wait it out.
I think they would have been, for lack of a better phrase, they would have just been shit on had they just taken a deal to take a deal with Miami, because there really wasn't a whole bunch of return coming back. Miami doesn't have the picks, and they certainly didn't.
Positions or timeline.
Yeah.
You don't want another guard on this team. We've plenty of guards.
Now, the main reason why this trade was a bit different was because there were three teams involved, so you were able to get certain picks from other areas. So like, the return that Portland got, they got DeAndre Ayton. They obviously got Jrue Holiday, like we mentioned.
Yeah, do you want to pull up the full details of the trade?
Sure.
It was the Blazers, the Bucks, and the Suns. And, the big details, Dame goes to the Bucks. We get Jrue Holiday as well as a couple picks. The Suns aspect of it, to me, is the most bizarre. They basically just do not want DeAndre Ayton on their team or their books, and thought that the depth of Yusuf Nurkic would help them in the playoffs.
I think that was more just the Blazers who are like, that's fine. We'll trade you a big for a big. Here are the trade details of it all. The Bucks receive Damian Lillard. That's all they get, which I think
that's plenty.
Great for them.
Yes.
Blazers receive Jrue Holiday, DeAndre Ayton from the Suns, Tumani Kamara, the Bucks 29 first-round pick, which is unprotected, and then they swap rights on the Bucks 28 and 2030 picks with the Blazers.
Those are all far out enough, too, that it does kind of become interesting, especially with Giannis almost feeling like he's year to year at this point.
Yeah, but you bring in Dame, though, and he said, hey, you need to surround me with some more people.
True.
Now,
but yeah, that's
29, 28, 29, and 30. So, like, yeah, that's still 5 years away until the first pick that you would get back.
Yeah.
So, like, say you have a bad year, somebody gets hurt, like, you can have a young guy that comes in for Milwaukee that also complement Dame, Giannis, and Middleton. Yep. I mean, Middleton's no young buck either. So, like,
he's an old buck, some would say.
Exactly.
One of the last.
the last part of the trade with the Suns, they got Yusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, who I think, that's just somebody they threw in, Nasir Little, and then Keon Johnson.
I don't get it for the Suns. I really don't. I don't know what they're seeing in Nurk. Maybe they were watching tape from 5 years ago. It's tough for me to think that, especially for a team like them that is all in and wants to win the championship. In the playoffs,
I don't know
you're
if
lucky
you got
if he's not fouling out. He's struggling to score. I don't know.
I was gonna say for the Suns, it just doesn't seem like you got enough complementary pieces for the stars that you have there.
I know they wanted to improve their depth, and I guess technically they may have, just because their depth was so horrific last year. But I don't think that their depth is at a championship level.
No, I mean you lose the defensive ability of DeAndre Ayton, his physicality, his rebounding ability. That's not necessarily what Nurk does.
No.
I mean, I know I played with him in 2K, which obviously is a lot different than real life, but man, he can't make a bucket in 2K and he can't rip down a rebound.
No, and to be fair, Ayton is insane in 2K, so the 2K comparison is doubly tough.
Well, see, the thing is, I've never played with Ayton on 2K, so I don't even know all that.
I've only played against him, and he is a monster. But yeah, in real life, maybe it's a bit closer. I think they just wanted a change there. It seemed like mentality-wise, maybe Booker, I know Chris Paul, and them weren't exactly excited all the time by all the effort that Ayton put out there, so maybe they just figured change of scenery, new guy coming in, big tall guy who plays against Jokic a lot, maybe he'll be able to help us. I don't necessarily see it, and as a Blazers fan, the only way we were ever going to trade Lillard is if we could dump the Nurkic contract, so it's a bit of a win-win for us, and we actually get a young guy who has that much potential like Ayton, whose deal, he just got paid. It's a little high, but I mean, compared to the deals where they're going to get in the next couple of years,
I was going to say, okay. Yeah, I think you're okay with taking the Ayton deal,
or at least flyer too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for what you just paid Nurkic, I think you're okay with paying Ayton for what he's going to be giving you in the future. Now there is a part 2 to this trade.
There is the Jrue Holiday.
Jrue Holiday aspect, since he was traded from the Bucks to the Blazers. I think it's not like it was a secret. I think everybody knew they were going to move on from Jrue Holiday.
Reports came out like this is going to be flipped to a contender. And a lot of names came up. The most hilarious version was the Heat. And
the Heat?
Basically, same Heat trade, even enough to get Jrue Holiday. And I mean, as it turns out, it doesn't really seem like it was. But yeah, there's a couple suitors out there, mostly Eastern contenders. Philly would have been interesting. But where did that end up going?
They ended up going to Boston, which I know is your squad, and I immediately texted you because there were 2 guys on that team that I know you actually like, and the fact they were traded to Portland, great, you might be able to see them in person, but it takes away from the team that is true to your heart. Jrue Holiday gets sent to the Celtics. The Trailblazers take on Malcolm Brogdon, Robert Williams III.
That's the one.
Yeah, Robert Williams III. And then they get a 24 first-round pick. Now, that's actually the Warriors' first-round pick.
Yeah.
So that's the earliest pick that they got out of both of these trades is at 24. And then they have a 2029 first-round pick that I believe was unprotected from the Celtics.
That's what I believe.
So you've got potentially 3 first-round picks in 2029. Or no, actually no, because they swapped the 29 ones with the Bucks.
Yeah.
So you've got 2 picks in 2029. You've got the 28 first-round pick from the Bucks that's unprotected, and then you're swapping 30s. So you really got.
Teams are going to be at that time in their timeline that it could really be a nice pick by that point. It's hard to tell.
Yeah. So for Portland, I mean, you really did get some depth back. You've got some bigger body. Fantastic trade all the way around for the 2 parts to this trade. I thought worked out well for Portland.
It really did. The entire haul of all these picks, as well as some sort of young shots you can take at center. Like the difference between our center situation last year, the Blazers and this year is like just night and day. Going from having Nurk and not really because he was sort of injured. So basically it was like Drew Banks was the center. Who did a good job filling in, but is definitely more of kind of a backup role.
Yeah.
First or second big off the bench. He ended up starting like 30 games for us, I think, last year.
Injuries played a factor too. Yeah.
It did, but they also kind of refused to sign another center, which is a whole other thing. But now to have DeAndre Ayton and Robert Williams, Time Lord, on the same team, and now they can basically just hope one of those works out.
Yeah.
And you keep one and you flip the other, and they're both young enough that you can still flip them for some kind of decent return.
Yeah, I mean,
I love it for the Blazers.
I say there's a contender next year and your team's not doing so well and they need a big. Like, you've got the options to flip one of them, like you just said, to possibly get a quick turnaround on whether it's more picks or even just a younger player to complement. Because think about it, you still have got Anthony Simmons.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Anthony Simmons.
Simons.
Yes. Sorry, I'm thinking of everybody else from my college that I went to is Simon Simmons.
Yeah, he is also very movable with that contract, and the other guards that they have that are a little younger. It's interesting. And I mean, with Ayton and Rob, like you said, you can flip them to teams who want young talent. You can flip them to teams that are ready to go. Both of those guys played minutes in the finals the last couple of years, so they're also ready to go in that sense. So it's very interesting, and I like watching both guys. I'm glad Time Lord is still in my life to some extent. From the Celtics side, it makes some sense. As high as the potential and ceiling for his defense and the team defense when he's out there, it's the best ability is availability. He's struggled staying on the court. So for them to get more of a sure thing with Jrue Holiday, who I've always loved as a player, and obviously with Marcus moving on, they needed another kind of defensive stalwart at guard for those perimeter guys. It makes a lot of sense for them. I'm more worried just about the Kristaps portion of the Celtics roster as far as, we got rid of the center that has injury issues. Who's our center now? Oh, he's the guy who has more injury.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a little worried about that. Al's playing a lot of minutes at his age. So those are kind of concerning. But honestly, having Jrue on this team is kind of a complete game changer. And it immediately makes this Milwaukee-Boston matchup
way more interesting.
Maybe the most interesting matchup in the whole league coming this year. Just because it's like the Bucks could come in and be like, we got Dame, we're good, we're set. And then they go into Boston and Jrue Holiday's on him, the guy who locked him up in that Pelicans-Blazers series back in the day that was a sweep. It kind of could immediately backfire on the Bucks in a certain way. So I'm fascinated to see how that goes. I like it for the Celtics. It just hurts a little.
It's funny. It always happens to the one guy who says, I want to stay here the rest of my career. And then a couple of days later, he got traded in that Dame deal. Let's talk about the losers of this trade. Mainly just sore losers. It's Miami. Jimmy Butler almost immediately came out with an Instagram story saying that he wanted the Bucks to be looked into for tampering.
Has to be satirical.
Yeah, I would assume so, because I mean everybody there's always tampering in the NBA, anyways.
There's literally like a legal tampering period. Is there not?
there is a thing that's illegal tampering. I mean that's in almost every sport, but at the same time, all these guys talk about each other nonstop, and like they're friends with each other off the court too.
You wouldn't be able to have an all-star game if we were actually going to crack down on that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Like, you wouldn't be able to go to the Olympics, all this stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
This is where the next teams are formed.
I mean, we briefly talked about it, but Miami, as much as they wanted to complete this trade, what Portland was asking for, Miami was never going to give them.
And as much as they, maybe more so their fans online talked about what Hero was worth, the only version of that kind of trade that would have worked with the Blazers is if they'd gotten a third team like what the Suns ended up doing.
Yeah, but it sounded like they
take Hero and give the Blazers stuff they actually want.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem like that was ever. Maybe they never looked for it. Maybe it never materialized.
From what I heard, they never really gave it the opportunity.
They seemed very confident that Dame said he'd want to go there and that we gave you a deal and you're going to take it.
Yeah.
And the Blazers were smart to wait and to find something better, and they've got a haul now. It's gonna be an interesting team to watch.
Now, one of the things that I heard, and it goes back to Joe Cronin, the GM for the Blazers.
Yeah.
Dame was actually thinking about rescinding his trade request if something couldn't get made with Miami, and he said he would stick around in Portland. But Cronin said the damage is already done. We're going to ship you no matter what. And I feel like that really could have irked people the wrong way because Dame is...
It irked me the wrong way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Dame is beloved here.
Now, here's the thing. I too saw this quote, and... kind of spiraled me for a whole day in my Blazers group chat. I kind of had to work through. Now, what it seems like that quote was actually getting across was not, I'm not going to get traded to Miami. All right, I'll come back. It sounds like it was, I will come back for as long as it takes to get the Miami deal done. Okay. That was the full context of what I've seen kind of reported, this was not, all right, actually, I'm not going to be asked for a trade. This isn't Kobe with the Lakers. I'll come back.
I didn't necessarily think it was that.
So yeah, it's to me, if that was it, and Cronin was like, "No, we're good." That I went on a bit of a spiral on Saturday because I thought that's what had happened. It seems like he was still set on being traded, but he was more allowable to maybe come in and play for the first 20 games or something.
Yeah, whatever, until you could get the deal done.
Wait till the deadline and then trade him. So I've calmed down a little bit on that front because I was leading the charge as far as so we didn't have to trade him? Because if we don't have to do it, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
That was kind of the whole thing, but
to me, it sounded more like the bridge was burned and Cronin didn't want to keep a guy around that didn't necessarily feel like he wanted to be around. I think had Dame stuck around, his teammates would have accepted him for the most part.
Yes.
You would think or hope. I mean,
for sure.
Obviously, the fans would have loved to have kept him around, even if it was for half a season, a quarter of a season, whatever it was, until it got the deal done. But, it just sounded – it was not good optics.
Would have been very awkward media days today as we're recording this. That whole – I think we're in a better – it's sad that it is over and that it is done, but it does seem like it was going to happen one way or the other at this point. Yeah. So they got a pretty good haul.
All right, well, that's enough NBA talk right now during the offseason.
We thought we were going to be milking this for like months. On our last episode, we were like, the Dame trade we'll be talking about, and then immediately it already happened.
It happened too fast. It was way too quick. I mean, it just happened, boom, like that. I mean, I don't think anybody was nobody was expecting Milwaukee, but nobody was expecting the trade to be that quick. I kind of think we all thought that it was sort of dead at the moment.
Yeah, it seemed like it was going to drag on, but it's good we're able to move forward. But yeah, that is kind of the big talk of the NBA today. So we'll get back to them at some point once they start heating up and get ready for their seasons. But you wanted to kind of talk a little bit about where the baseball things ended up
so
those wild card races.
The wild card races have been finalized. The last day of the regular season was yesterday, October 1st, as we record on October 2nd. Two collapses on teams. One of them I was personally cheering for. The other one was just sort of the team in the area that you would root for. Cubs choked away their wild card lead down the stretch.
Yeah, you were talking about this.
It was pretty evident that it was going to not end up so well when we were recording the last episode. And man, did it not end well for the Cubs. They slipped just out of contention. In fact, they slid into 5th place into the wild card rankings at one point. They were a game and a half back. I mean, things just fell off. They were playing Atlanta. They had leads in games. At one point, they were up 6-0 against the Atlanta Braves, and they lost 7-6 in extra innings. Like, a right fielder dropped a fly ball that was routine. It would have ended the inning in the 8th. Instead, 2 runs come in and score. It was just... It looked like the Cubs of the 90s or like the early mid-2000s after the 03-04 run where it's just like it was bad baseball.
Now, is there a scapegoat for this?
No, there's
or a fall guy, or what's the reasoning here?
A lot of people want to blame David Ross and the lineups that he was sending out there because sometimes it wasn't necessarily the best players out there playing, but when you're in a slump, sometimes you just want to see different things. Like Mastroboni is a guy that is played in many minor league seasons, and this year he was brought up for the Cubs just because we needed bodies. Now, he played well at times. But then it started to become lefty-righty matchups and things like this, and it seemed like maybe David Ross was getting too cute with some of the lineups.
Do you think he'll be back? Was it that bad?
I think he'll be back mainly because nobody expected much from this team to begin with at the beginning of the season, and then everybody thought they were going to be sellers until they went on this win streak right before the trade deadline, and then it became, well, maybe we're buyers.
Yeah.
And
kind of trick yourself into going for it, and then
so you could have flipped Cody Bellinger for something because he was on a 1-year deal and he was raking at the time, and he sort of cooled off too near the end of the season, but they fell off, and then the worst part is the Mariners are just trying to go back to the playoffs, and they ran into the Houston Astros, who were fighting for a wild card spot too, since they were all behind the Texas Rangers. But the Mariners they couldn't get it done. They were down to the final day of the season. And the stat that I saw that came up was dating back to 2014. The Seattle Mariners have been eliminated on either one of 161 or 162. That's game 161 or 162, a whopping 4 times since 2014. Only 8 teams have experienced it at all, and only one other team has had it twice since 2014 to be eliminated on the second to last day or the last day. And it was an emotional day. Like, Luis Castillo couldn't get in the strike zone. He walked so many guys. He brought in 5 runs in his last outing, and so the playoffs just sort of slipped away from them, and the Twins ended up getting that final wild card spot along with the Toronto Blue Jays. And so, like, there's some interesting matchups that'll be in that first round. You're going to get a matchup that you saw plenty of, at least on the NL side. You're going to get the Marlins and the Phillies. I mean, those are division opponents, so they've seen each other a lot, so that actually could be a quite entertaining series between those two. Arizona is a young team that I don't think many people thought were going to make as much of a playoff push this year as they have. Corbin Carroll is easily the rookie of the year. I mean, he's got 20-plus home runs, 50 stolen bases. He's a speed demon, like local hero around here, by the way, Hillsboro Hops, Corbin Carroll. So they're playing the Milwaukee Brewers, and the one thing you could say about the Brewers is just they were in a bad division, so like somebody sort of had to win. It's not like they necessarily ran away with the division. At one point, the Cubs were only a game back, and that was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. So, they're just a down. They're in the playoffs, but they're not the best really team that could have made the playoffs.
Competition around them.
Exactly. So, somebody has to win the division and get in. Meanwhile, you got the Braves and the Dodgers, 2 great teams. I think that's going to end up being your NLCS. I would love to see the Braves kind of make that push again. They're just fun. I mean, they're 5-6 different guys that have 25-plus home runs on the year. And then on the AL side of things, Blue Jays, Twins, that has a less stellar matchup, not as many big names necessarily. Rays and Rangers, that could be an interesting matchup as well. But overall, just it's the start of the MLB postseason. A lot of interesting aspects, some newer teams in there. Like, I'd love to see Arizona try to make a splash. If they were to win, they would take on the Dodgers. So, and then the other side is all just like the NL East division. It's Miami versus the Phillies, and then the winner would take on the Atlanta Braves. So it's just all the NL East over there. But very fun. We've got some good matchups, some less intriguing matchups overall, but like my eyes are going to be peeled on the Blue Jays. They're a secondary team for me. I like to see what Vladdy does. They've got like all the sons on that team. Biggio's son, Guerrero's son, Bichette's son. They're all on that team. So I think Kevin Biggio has been up and down with that team, but he's still a top prospect and will probably be on the postseason roster. But yeah, it's anybody that we might have grown up with in those like late 90s seasons, their sons now on the Blue Jays. So that's kind of the exciting aspect of it. Obviously, the Orioles having won 100 games for the first time in like 40 years.
Holy cow.
So
I know them as
bottom feeders.
I didn't want to say it. But that is the impression I've got.
Now that I've said that, now the
limited knowledge.
The ownership of the Orioles is going to have me canceled, much like their broadcaster did that one time.
Well, you got to be really careful. They're rough with their play-by-play guys.
Oh yeah, for speaking the truth.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I like the Orioles would just be an exciting team to watch because I think you should just tune in to get the atmosphere back inside of Camden Yards and what that's all about. Having sellout crowds for the Orioles again, back in the playoffs.
Wow.
Not as a wild card team.
That sentence has not been said in those sequences for a long time, I'm sure.
Very, very long time. So yeah, it's just it should be exciting, less chalk. Than I think in previous years. I think you could just always pencil in the Dodgers and
I mean, there's no big Red Sox, Cub, Yankee.
Yeah, nothing like that.
Organizations don't necessarily.
Obviously, everybody hates Houston. They're in the playoffs technically. They're the 2 seed, but they're very hateable. I don't think anybody really wants to see them succeed, especially after their past transgressions and all that.
It'll be interesting to watch. I'm very much a casual and learning about it this time. So, who would you? I know you said who you thought maybe one of your. I'm going to probably say all this stuff wrong. One of your conference championship choices were. Who do you think is going to be in the World Series? What would be your choice?
My choice would be Braves and Orioles.
Okay.
Now, that is chalk in a sense because it's both 1-1. But I think that also adds the most exciting matchup between these two. Now, half the country is not really going to be involved. It's Baltimore and Atlanta, so it's very East Coast centric. But having Atlanta in on the NL side, I think, would be the most exciting. For the AL, I mean, Baltimore would be great. Rays would always be good too. I mean, that's another franchise that's still looking for its first World Series title.
Yeah,
so
any of those, I'm here to root for. So
yeah,
we'll see if they can get it done this time around.
I mean, Milwaukee's technically never won a World Series. They've been to one World Series, and that was back when they were in the AL. So that tells you how long ago it was because they're in the NL.
Maybe they'll get that Dame bump.
Maybe. You'll get that Milwaukee Dame bump when people start showing up. All right. Enough baseball talk. We had some pretty interesting games this weekend in the NFL world, including we knew about the slime game with Nickelodeon.
How could you forget?
Yeah, of course, the MVP, the Nickelodeon valuable player. But this week they did something very different because the Nickelodeon one you still had everybody on the field. They just put in CGI characters around and everything. This time they took it to Andy's bedroom, Toy Story style.
Yeah, for the London game, bright and early on Disney Plus and ESPN Plus.
I don't think was necessarily a bad thing. Younger kids are getting up earlier, so like if you're going to do it for any game, you'd want to do it probably for that early game.
Yeah.
Now you watched it from the very beginning, but everybody was animated.
It was a fascinating thing to see them even attempt to have a live football game going on that you're basically like kind of live, maybe with a bit of a delay, kind of live animating all of those players as their Toy Story toy versions of these little football guys running around. Yeah, a little floor mat on Andy's bedroom from the movies. And it was fascinating to watch, so I tried to get up as early as I could and watch as much as I could. And it's, it's different. I mean, I,
100%,
as a gamer, can see all of the jank all of the time, and as a broadcast person, so there was certainly a lot of that. I mean, it's kind of to be expected. The thing that I think they struggled with was, like, the in-between play stuff, as far as...
It was a lot of the characters just sort of standing around by the line of scrimmage, and...
It's a lot of, like, there's, like, 25 people kind of, like, doing a little huddle there, so... Sometimes they would, it seemed like, lose some kind of reference point and all the players would just, like, kind of disappear. Yeah. And then they'd have to cut to a wide shot and it'd just be like the field there. Then halfway through the play, they'd kind of appear again. There was one moment where, and I later watched the highlight of a Bijan one-handed catch on a check down. Yeah. And in the Toy Story version, the ball didn't really work when it snapped. And so the whole play, the ball was actually where he caught it. And then once everybody else caught up to him, then he caught the ball and, like, started running with it. But for the most part, it was fascinating to watch. The one play I did see live that worked pretty well, not for the Falcons so much, was the Desmond Ridder pick 6. Oh, yeah. Which has kind of been making the rounds on social media. But it actually did, like, match up pretty well. Yeah, we were just watching a clip of that before we started, and it seemed pretty accurate. I think... there were some hiccups early on and how to get things going. From what I heard, there was a point where, like, the plays were happening, but they weren't happening on screen yet. So it was just like a generic wide shot at times until they got everything to sync up. Did you have a favorite part of watching the game that way? Like, for me, two things that stood out that I thought were unique, but mainly because it's the Toy Story thing. Yes. The claw being the ball spotter. That was entertaining. And then the other one was Slinky Dog being your first down marker. That was the best. Because it was just like, at one point, I watched a video of it on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, the penalty. And then you see Slinky Dog just backing his little booty up and stretching himself out as the first down marker. Actually genius. That was a great use of Slinky Dog. Yeah. Going back to what some of the things you said, like sort of awkward in between plays, sometimes they would have a nice play and they would flash to a different part of Andy's room and it was like the electronic keyboard thing and it just said like great play and it did like a little dance. Like I thought that would be entertaining for the kids in that aspect because that way they're not just watching something random on the screen. Like
that's more relatable to what they're used to.
There was definitely some aspects of those. Some of my favorites where they would throw out to a full screen graphic of like Zurg. And
nice.
Zurg is from the planet Bleplorp, and he is the dad of Buzz Lightyear. Spoilers or whatever.
Yeah, if you haven't seen Lightyear.
So yeah, they had a couple of those. I watched them every time they would kick a field goal. It was like a bunch of little letter blocks.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And when they made it, they would like all fall over, and then they would at one point they explained like what a field goal was. So there was some like
helping out the little kids, really
edutainment kind of stuff.
Edutainment, I
like
that.
Get the kids into the sport a little bit more if they want, which is what they're trying to do with all this stuff of like, especially as more generations go on, they're kind of more maybe quicker attention span, more used to all these kind of graphics and different things. So just a regular football game might not do it. Put some slime, you put some Zerg, you put some Slinky Dogs.
I mean, you think about it, you get like one play every 45 seconds, basically.
Yes. So it was fascinating. It seemed like it actually probably worked better than I thought it would have. To say the truth. Like especially the in-game stuff. Actually seemed to work pretty well.
I did enjoy the little, when they were like breakaway speed, you'd get a little flame thing sort of behind them. Yes. It's like, oh, this guy's moving pretty fast out there, I guess. Like the tiny little entertainment things, I think, worked well for people who are our age, and I bet you with parents as well. Trying to have the younger kids involved with it. I know, like Big Cat on Pardon My Take, he's like, I'm purposely waking up early to watch this with my kids. This will be the first time they're actively watching football with their dad. So he was excited about just getting his kids involved in with it. And
100%.
I think that's a good jump for the NFL. Now, I don't want to be seeing this like every single week or anything like that, but it's a good starting point when you're still trying to reach out to a new demographic, basically.
It's worth the experiment, if nothing else.
100%.
And it was fascinating. They've, lots of stuff in the Disney catalog. You could come back and do this. I'm curious to see where it goes. The technology's only going to get better. But yeah, it was very much like you put two computers on a Madden sim and sit down and watch it, and with all of the jank included.
Yeah.
My favorite part is just that my image of Desmond Ridder now is pretty much only going to be these highlights of his toys. His toy highlights of him throwing picks because he kept throwing interceptions. And this was the first Desmond Ridder game I'd really sat down and watched. So I like that in my head now for all time. When somebody mentions Desmond Ridder in 5 years, I'll be like, oh, yeah, he threw that interception in Andy's room.
That's right.
That's where he got benched. He's still in the toy chest somewhere back
there.
there.
Right.
So, yeah, but maybe we can get into some actual real-life football.
Well, I was going to say, we could talk actually about that game. I think the Jaguars are going to be back in London next week as well. They're taking on the Bills, I believe.
They're in London for 2 straight weeks?
2 straight weeks. One was a home game, one was a road game. They're playing at Tottenham next week instead of wherever they just were, Wembley.
Yeah, what is going on this year with 2 London games?
A German game.
Double headers on Monday night for the first 2 weeks or whatever.
Got to make that money.
I guess.
Got to make that money.
Very strange.
Of course, there's always that rumor that they want to create a division in the NFL in Europe, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense logistically.
I still, even in the modern era, I still think the travel would be just far too much.
Too much. Think about it. Teams usually show up 2 or 3 days before the game. They should usually show up like a Friday for a Sunday game or whatever. Well, think about it. Now you have to deal with jet lag and everything else that comes with jumping ahead 8-9 hours.
The only way they're making it work now is pretty much every time the team either gets a bye before or after their London game. I guess maybe that does make sense why they stay in London and play 2. Then they'll get a bye, but man, they just said, Jags, get out of our country.
They've been pushing the Jags. The Jags have played over in London 10 times. 10 times.
Yeah, I feel.
They're 5-5.
That was the other reason I was happy to watch the Toy Story version. Was like, I don't need to watch the Jags again. I mean, they're getting better, but.
It was less exciting stuff. The more exciting game of the week, so much so that multiple CBS stations begged to get rid of the Bears-Broncos game to put on this game, and it was Bills-Dolphins. And I think everybody just assumed that the Dolphins
going to keep rolling.
They were world beaters basically after putting up 70 on a Broncos team. I think we also had to realize that water was going to find its level. Because you're not going to have 700 plus yards, 10 touchdowns, and 70 points in a game.
Plus that Broncos defense. I read a statistic yesterday that was basically like I forget the specifics, but their DVOA is like on pace to be the historically worst defense of all time. So
yeah, we'll talk about that on the next game because I do have a stat for that as well. But
didn't quite go their way.
No, it didn't. It was heavily favored in the way of the Bills in that game.
Yeah, Josh Allen was just kind of slinging it this week. When he's on and he's not randomly throwing horrible interceptions like in week 1, they're really tough to beat. They can just get going, and Stephon Diggs can do some things, and they just kind of run away with it. And Oliver on defense was kind of just tormenting them, so...
Yeah, I mean, Josh Allen had 320 yards, 4 touchdowns. Stephon Diggs had 3 of those touchdowns and 120 yards on only 6 receptions, by the way.
Did you see his long play where he ran a hitch and then threw the guy off?
No.
2 guys off and ran all the way. It was... He like motioned over to the left side, they were saying specifically to get like their worst corner on him basically, and then ran a hitch, caught the ball. The guy did the classic like tried to like grab him and spin him down, and it spun him away from the safety, which then like slingshotted him like 50 yards of the field basically. And yeah, that was about half of his yardage on the day. They kind of just ran away with it.
I think everybody thought that Josh Allen had become reckless again after week 1, which historically
he looked reckless.
He did. I mean, historically he had never really played well at the Jets in his career.
Sure.
He had always sort of struggled with that defense away at the Meadowlands. So,
and it is a really good defense this year, it would appear.
Yeah, and much better. I mean, even after last night's game against Patrick Mahomes, I think a team that easily could have thrown in the towel with who's leading their team right now in Zach Wilson, and
actually looked kind of good.
He looked very competent last week.
Speaking of this Josh Allen Jets game and this Mahomes Jets game, like part of me wonders if there is some kind of Freaky Friday business going on, because boy did Josh Allen look like Zach Wilson in that week 1 game.
Yeah,
and boy did Zach Wilson almost look like Patrick Mahomes last night. And Mahomes was throwing these brain-dead interceptions.
It was the first time that a quarterback had outplayed Mahomes for more yards, more completions, and more touchdowns in his 127 career starts.
That's crazy. And he was making some boneheaded decisions. So I'm curious when that investigation is going to start up, because it just seems a little strange. I don't quite buy this from Zach Wilson.
Some people were saying that Taylor Swift was taking the town away from Patrick Mahomes. So
it's possible. She was
big one.
There again last night.
The other spotlight, mainly fantasy-wise, the Dolphins running back room. Is it A-Chain? Is that how you say his name?
Apparently it is A-Chan.
A-Chan, okay. A-Chan, though, 8 carries.
Just corrected everybody.
Good. I needed the correction. A-Chan. That's great, because I'm tired of when athletes don't correct me for 4 years, and it seems to be a common occurrence sometimes. But A-Chan had 8 carries, 101 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, the rookie seems like he's really ready to explode and take over this backfield.
He might have just taken it over, because Mostert had a slow day, and he had 2 fumbles. He lost one of them, so...
Doghouse.
And he didn't really... The game was kind of over, and he's kind of older, injury concerned, so he didn't really come back in the game, but it's definitely starting to go that direction. Like... A-Chan, and I have both of them, and I started both of them in fantasy, so I'm well aware. I'm keeping track of this.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love for both of them to be startable. That would be nice. But at this point, I don't think I can bench A-Chan. Like, the ceiling is so high.
I think you would have to keep him going.
I have to find a spot for him somewhere. So now it's flipped from starting both of them to am I still starting Mostert, kind of. And I just think that's going to happen more and more, because A-Chan is just so explosive, and he's built perfectly for this offense. Like, I think it makes sense why Mike McDaniel was banging the table to get him.
Yeah, I think it would make sense if you have a team if the Dolphins are going up against a poor rushing defense.
Yeah.
Like, if you start both of them, it seems like a no-brainer for how McDaniels likes to get his guys touches and everything else like that.
Yeah, so that is a pretty terrifying aspect of that offense, not to mention the Tyreek Hills, the Jalen Waddles, like the Durham Smythes.
Yeah.
Everyone's talking about them. So yeah, I'm sure they'll bounce back. They still have a crazy offense, but yeah, the AFC East just keeps getting better to some degree.
Some degrees, yeah. Let's talk about it is the biggest choke job for this franchise in over 40 years.
Oh.
The Chicago Bears lost to the Denver Broncos 31-28 after being up 28-7.
Yeah.
and they gave up 17 points in the fourth quarter. The one positive you could take away from this, if you're a Bears fan, is Justin Fields looked great. There was a point where he was 16 for 16 in the first half.
Yeah.
And that stat you were talking about with the Broncos, the stat I had for you was in their past 2 games, outside of a Hail Mary at the end of the first half for Justin Fields that was incomplete, the Broncos had not had an incompletion from the opposing quarterback in the first half the last 2 weeks.
Oh, my God.
Justin Fields was 16 for 16. Tua Tagovailoa was also, I think, 16 for 16 in the first half as well. So, I mean, the Broncos defense, very bad.
Yeah.
And in the second half, I wouldn't necessarily say that the Broncos won, but more the Bears defeated themselves.
Yeah, the moment-to-moment stuff, I can't remember. The big play that I think obviously flipped it quite a bit was the kind of, I call it the Jameis moment, where Fields goes back and kind of does a bit of maybe a pump fake, and the ball kind of keeps going, and one of the Broncos picks it up and runs it back for 7. That definitely flipped some things, but I think there's still a lot of positives here. I mean, 300-yard passing game for Fields.
First of his career.
Never happened before.
4 touchdowns, first of his career.
DJ Moore was actually involved in the offense. It doesn't seem like they have the strongest running game still at this point, but there's some positive. I mean, going when they're up 20-7, I was basically thinking I have a question for you. Is it more embarrassing to have 70 put on you by the Dolphins or to have 28 put on you by the Bears? At the time, I thought that number was going to keep growing. But
yeah, I think at that time, I'd still go with the 70 from the Dolphins. Every team can have a good week per se. The Dolphins had a great week.
Historically. Yeah.
I mean, a 50-point drubbing is pretty bad. I would say that's more embarrassing than, say, the Bears offense putting 28 points together.
Okay, just wanted to,
get it. Just please continue to put salt in my wounds over here.
At the time, I thought they were going to keep going.
Well, the worst part is I did not watch most of this game until the final 5 minutes or so.
Yeah.
And apparently that's when everything just hit the fan. The Bears went forward on 4th and 1 deep in Denver territory, and they ran, I believe it was just an ISO play for Herbert. He got stuffed instead of kicking the field goal. And then almost the very next play, I think there was one play in between, but Wilson hit Mims for a 40-yard gain, put them in field goal territory, and then they kicked the game-winning field goal. Fields, when he took the drive for that final possession for them, had only 3 incompletions at the time, which, incredible. I think it was 28 for 31 at the time. Unfortunately, though, he had an interception at the very end, and on that last drive, it just he tried to throw it to Kmet. Kmet broke in towards the field, and Fields threw it to his outside shoulder where the defender was, and it ended up just being a somewhat easy pick to end the game. And
bit of a miscommunication.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm okay with this loss. It's going to sound like such Bears loser. I'm whatever. Top 2 picks right now, though.
There's a big silver lining.
Top 2 picks right now.
Top 2 picks in the draft. We're going to get to rock bottoms here pretty soon, but that, I think, is the one reason that you are not able to qualify for that.
Yeah.
Top 2 picks in the draft is a nice spot to be in.
It is a nice, and this is very, very far out there. We obviously still have 13 more games to go, but if Justin Fields can put up similar performances like this, I'm not saying he needs to do it every week, but if you're getting 250 plus and 2 touchdowns, and you, for the love of God, cut down on some turnovers, whether you just hold on to the ball for no more fumbles.
Yeah.
I can live with 3 touchdowns and an interception if you're putting up
I bet you can.
a lot of yards and you're spreading the ball around. That's okay. Yesterday he showed me that he can be an NFL passer.
Yeah.
He was on time with his throws. He was on target with his throws.
That's more volume than he's usually had, really.
100%. I mean, he had 28 completions. He's usually only throwing the ball 20 times.
I don't think that's ever happened.
No,
either, right?
he's had he set a record for completions.
Yeah.
For a Bears quarterback, which goes back over 100 years, and our greatest quarterback is from the 50s.
Yeah.
I was very encouraged with what Justin Fields had to do, and I'll be interested to hear what the local media has to say, because he actually looked like a quarterback for once. Not
he did.
We're going to let him go run around, which he extended plays yesterday. That was the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Extended plays and made the right moves for the most part.
Yeah.
And so if he can just grow on that, again, I don't need to see 400 yards, 4 touchdowns or whatever, but like show me he can consistently get 250 and above passing, or at least set him up for those opportunities.
Use his skill set to what it's needed. Like get some mobility in there, get him out the pocket, get him moving, have some options. And this year is basically going to be kind of a last tryout for him at this point for this team, because if you end up at that top pick and you don't love your quarterback, you're probably going to end up taking Caleb Williams.
And that's kind of where
not bad.
I mean, it's good, but I've also heard Caleb Williams is kind of reckless at times, which you sort of see it in the college game. You can get away with it, but what I'm talking about goes right into that point, though. Like, say Justin Fields does prove to you that he is your guy.
Yeah.
Like, you could have a similar situation to what you had this year. Instead of, taking 1 overall, you could flip that and get more picks, maybe get somebody else to help.
Sure.
And then you still have pick number 2.
Yeah.
It's not like you're falling back so far. Like, you get a key interior defensive lineman or a key offensive lineman for you.
And if Fields pops off and you're set with him too, the price for that number 1 pick for Caleb
through
Williams
the roof.
It's going to be double what it was last year.
Yeah.
Like,
you thought Carolina paid a bunch.
Some desperate teams who absolutely want that.
What about Arizona? They got 2 first-round picks. It's like, well, man,
send those over.
We're not losing as much as we wanted to.
Yeah.
And now you're out.
It's
so
an enticing situation.
There's the silver lining to going 0-4. Obviously, you want a win just from a fan base perspective, but many positives. I feel like for once this season, through 4 weeks, the world is not burning to the ground in Chicago.
You needed this game too.
Eberflus clearly on the hot seat. I don't disagree with that, but personnel-wise, like Fields, you got the production out of DJ Moore too. He went for $130 and a touchdown.
On my bench.
Yeah, well, I had Kmet on my bench, and he went for 20 points.
Well, don't worry, we'll start him next week, and they'll definitely still do
nothing.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, speaking of that draft class and potential rock bottoms, my Patriots had a similar...
Yeah, I was going to say,
we were never up.
From one painful game to the next, Patriots took on the Dallas Cowboys, and Dallas took last week personally, and that lost to the Cardinals, and they wanted to make sure that was...
them after that. That's the perfect time.
Ended up being a get-right game for the Cowboys. As they won 38-3, and you mentioned you were never up. And that's because it was true. You were down 10-3 in the first quarter, and then Cowboys ripped off 18 in the second, and then 10 more points in the second half, where it seems like they sort of coasted to that point. It was 28-3 at halftime.
Now that's a score that I used to like the score of.
But the other way,
I had some flashbacks, but no, it didn't end up going the same direction. Yeah, this might be getting towards the end of this Mac Jones era already. It was easily his worst game of his career. He made some very boneheaded throws that went the opposite direction. I mean, in all honesty, the game started 3-3, all good. The Cowboys are driving, and then Christian Gonzalez dislocates his shoulder. And this was the matchup I was excited to watch. I talked about it in the last episode. He goes out. I was immediately like, oh, no. And then the very next play, they'd send CD out wide, covered by Miles Bryant, our designated you're-going-to-get-burned cornerback. Every time I'm like, oh, who just burned that guy? I'm like, oh, it's Miles Bryant again. Okay, cool. He's the guy who let whatever McKenzie for the Bills go for like 140 yards against us. Yeah, so, that's on his resume. I mean, it's not necessarily his fault. It's CeeDee Lamb. It's one-on-one. But they immediately throw a fade one-on-one to him, and it's like he's not even on the field. It's like untouched CeeDee Lamb touchdown. Come back down the other side. Mac Jones fumbles it into the defensive lineman's hands, who walks into the end zone. And I was like, oh, this is how every game has gone this year.
Sounds about right.
Immediately dig a hole for ourselves and then kind of scrap back, except that part didn't even end up happening. Mac had like a couple good plays. He had one where he got away with throwing across his body back across the field that actually ended up working, and then a couple plays later, or maybe a series later, he tried it again, and it did not work.
It never works out twice. And as a former quarterback, let me tell you, it never works out twice in a row.
He did it once. He was like, oh, I guess I can do this then, and it immediately backfired. Another pick six. He ended up getting benched Belichick said because the game was out of hands. But the one lucky thing he has is that they do not like their backup quarterbacks, I will say. Like they
don't like the Zap attack?
They cut Zappy preseason and got him back on waivers. That's how much they don't really care to start him. They tried to get some
Corral from the
from
Panthers,
and there was some weird, maybe physical or kind of mental thing that took him out of there.
Well, he was still having the Liz Frank injury that he was recovering from, and then you picked up
through.
Will Greer, who was like the third quarterback from Dallas.
That is the one thing I think that'll keep Mac starting a lot of these games this season, but it's a bit grim.
Now, you honestly think that they didn't like Zappy and that's why they cut him? It wasn't other teams are cutting other players and we might need some space to at least sign him? Because you could always sign him back to the practice squad.
And they did end up doing that, but they weren't afraid of him being claimed by anybody, I guess I should say. Like, they were pretty confident nobody else would take him, and nobody else did. Now, at the time, I think I mentioned to you that it seemed like it was because we were having offensive line injuries that we needed those roster spots for those guys, but, I mean, they clearly just don't care too much for their backups, so that's the one thing Mac has on its side. I mean, the Matt Patricia year, I think, completely threw him off. It's been better this year, but honestly, like, there's still a lot of problems with the offense. There's still a lot of problems with the skill position players. It doesn't seem like we can run the ball at all this year, which isn't at least something we could do the past couple of years. Like, Ramondre's kind of fallen off a cliff. Zeke is, like, outperforming him in some of these games, which I did not think would be possible preseason, so I don't know. They are addicted to the screen passes. They're very conservative in their play calling, and they don't have a lot of talent, and their offensive line's not good. So,
see,
other than that,
all these holes, but there's a couple other things.
Special teams is right. We can kick now.
Well, it's funny you say that because I am thinking about the Patriots in the past. Now they had like a couple names that really stood out. Obviously, you had Gronk.
Yes.
But like, when I think of their receiving core outside of like that undefeated season with Randy Moss and I believe Welker was there still.
They've gotten by with this model for a long time with the David Givens and the Troy Browns and even Julian Edelman.
Yeah, but like you have
low pick.
But like Edelman's I love Julian Edelman, but he's not like a world beater or like your number one receiver or anything like that. And you had a guy in Tom Brady who
made it work.
He made it work because he got his guys off the couch and practicing with him in the off season and timing everything up like that. Where nothing against Mac, I just don't know what his process is. But like he doesn't. It's Tom Brady got the most out of the talent that was around him because of the way he worked with them.
Yeah.
Where with the Patriots now, you're still trying to do that, but you don't have the same type of mentality that you've had in the past.
You don't have the ultimate elevator at quarterback anymore.
Exactly.
You have a guy who arguably he needs everything to be elevated around him, and then he can play a pretty good game. Like Mac Jones could do what Brock Purdy's doing with San Francisco.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
pretty confident in saying that. But if he's not in a good situation, if he doesn't have the talent around him, he doesn't have a lot of his own tools to get out of these situations or the physical abilities. So I don't know. I've been getting worried for a little bit here, and it's getting a little more worrying the longer on we go. And even in the Brady years, some of my bugaboos with that offense were always like that. The way that the offense worked has always been like it has to be on time. If you ever get a little bit of a holding penalty, a backwards play, it all does kind of fall apart rather quickly, even when we had Brady. So, and that's kind of been a staple of this Bill O'Brien offense for a long time. So, and it's happened this year, and if there's ever a single bad play within a sequence or a series, it just kills. If they take a sack, if there's a penalty, if one of the screens that they run 33% of the time doesn't go forward, it just immediately kind of makes it so they can't get that first down and they have to punt. And the defense is good. It's really good, but it's just it's easier to play offense nowadays. Like eventually you're gonna get one, you're gonna get a couple, and if you can't keep up, there's not much to talk about.
I have a topic I'd like to discuss with you. Talked about the backup quarterback and Mac Jones and not really feeling threatened by anybody. Do you remember the name Kyle Sloter at all?
No.
Okay, well he was a backup in the league for a few years. I follow him on social media, and he brought up a point the other day where I kind of understand it. He says teams don't bring in backup quarterbacks to try to win jobs. They just bring them in for safety blankets, where you don't necessarily have the best quarterback as the backup. You just have somebody who's not going to threaten your starter. And I feel like a lot of teams get stuck in purgatory because they draft a guy high and they don't have – they've got the pressure around them to, like, start and everything, but they don't have the backup pressure. Where, like, when I was in athletics and stuff like that, there was always competition between me and the next guy. Yeah. But we got along. We were teammates. We were fun and everything else like that. But there was always that competition element where Sloter, who was a backup quarterback, who I think probably could be a backup on a roster, but he's not anywhere right now. He just talks about how nobody wants the backup quarterback to threaten the starter in any way. So they don't bring in the best guy to be the backup. They bring in a guy that they know is going to be safe, that they know is not going to threaten the ego or whatever for the starter. And I was wondering what your thoughts might be, because I agree with Kyle. There's plenty of backup quarterbacks that are not good. Like, why is Tim Boyle a starter or a starting quarterback at times, backup most of the time, when he had an incredibly terrible record at UConn in college? Terrible touchdown.
Backup for the Steelers still.
Because apparently he's still a first-round pick, and people think they can do something for him.
Yeah.
But, like, undrafted guys, like, why do you trade for Trey Lance if you're the Cowboys when you have a guy like Cooper Rush who went 5-1 in 6 starts for you as an undrafted guy? Like, obviously he's competent to run your offense and win you games, and then why do you bring in a backup quarterback like that? Because it's not you're not elevating your quarterback room. You're not pushing your starter to be that much better. And I'm not even saying Cooper Rush is like the best backup quarterback, because he's serviceable, but he is not the best backup to help you win games in case your starter goes down.
No, yeah, I mean, specifically with that Cowboys trade for Trey Lance, I specifically don't know why or what the point of that is. It feels like a Jerry Jones ego move or some kind of weird Dak Prescott down the line insurance, but it's not the move of a team that's trying to win a Super Bowl this year and needs somebody who could come in if Dak gets hurt. Because that's not Trey Lance.
No, not at all.
He needs like a whole season. We still haven't really seen him play at all.
Yeah.
So I don't know why they did that. Like, I 100% agree. If for the Cowboys, that should be like a. I mean, my go-to at this point is always Gardner Minshew, because I just think he is.
He's a gamer.
Probably the best backup in the league, maybe right now. It doesn't exactly fit the play style of Dak, because that's my big thing with backups. I get annoyed when
they don't have the same play style.
Quarterback is a wildly different play style.
So you like the Lamar Jackson, Tyler Huntley backup?
I do.
Quarterback.
I don't necessarily like the Tyler Huntley,
but he's got similar skill sets.
He slots into the offense. Mm-hmm. It's like I'm sorry to do the Bears analogy, but it's like when Andy Dalton was the starter, and that doesn't even really work because Fields was the rookie. But Andy Dalton's the starter, gets hurt or is bad, I forget which, and Fields comes in, and they just ran the Andy Dalton offense for that first game. And it's like, what?
Got him murdered.
What are we doing here? Yeah. So, stuff like that where I want my backup to have a similar skill set to the actual starter, or I have to change the entire offense when the guy gets hurt.
Yeah, I mean, like, think about it. If Justin Fields gets hurt, just because you brought up the Bears.
Yeah.
Nathan Peterman is the backup.
Well,
how does this guy still have a job?
I have no idea how
he
has a job.
If Nathan Peterson is my third quarterback who doesn't take up a roster spot, I'm more okay with that than him being my number 2 quarterback to come in immediately after Fields.
I definitely that's a tough one. Yeah,
because I don't.
He's like one of the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen play in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So I don't really.
And it goes back to what Sloter's talking about, though. It's. You don't have a guy that's actually pushing your quarterback to get better or be better, because there's nobody on his heels to possibly take the spot. Because you want your quarterback to feel safe and secure that he's our guy.
I don't know if I totally buy that, though. Like, are they going to bench Justin Fields because the backup's a little better? They have so much invested in Justin Fields to continue to play.
I wouldn't necessarily... it's not necessarily to make him benched in any way, but it adds more competition to the room to try to get the best out of your guy.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Not necessarily like benching Fields to put in Tyson Bagent or whatever, who's also another backup for the Bears. But like, it's creating a better competition in the room to try to get the most out of your guy.
Yeah. I don't know. I have some experience with this, specifically with the Jimmy G, Tom Brady situation, I suppose, because that does seem he specifically.
You don't think that fired up Tom?
I think it did. I just think I don't know. I guess it goes both ways
because it fired up Tom.
He wanted them to trade Jimmy G.
Yeah. No, I get that.
He's definitely not a guy who's afraid of that competition either. So,
but see, like,
I don't really know where that lands.
That sort of plays into what I'm saying, though. That fired up Tom to try to take his game to another level to make sure that something bad didn't happen to him.
And I guess I was going to say the problem is most of the time his backup was Brian Hoyer.
Well, if that's Brian Hoyer.
But that's not true. Throughout the years they were drafting.
They had Mallet.
They drafted Jacoby Brissett. They were always kind of getting somebody else in the room. So, yeah, I don't know. I certainly would always want my backup to be the best option that I could have. These starting quarterbacks who are drafted highly already have plenty of pressure on them, so it wouldn't really be a consideration of like, oh no, he might be more pressured. It's like, I think he's got pressure.
The guy already has pressure. I just felt like it was Slaughter brought up the point of just like getting more competition for your guy, not necessarily to take over, but to try to elevate his play. I found the best rooms that I was in were people they were like constantly talking, and there was communication between the starter and the backup, or even the third string, because the third string guy who's not playing, like, he might see something that you just don't notice because your mind is playing
fresh set eyes,
everything else. So I find it discouraging at times. You're not getting the best backup, and I only brought that up because you talked about Zappy being back there, and it's like, well, that's not putting any pressure on Mac to try to perform better in any way. Speaking of quarterbacks who are playing great, though, especially as a rookie, C.J. Stroud has done a terrific job as a starting quarterback for the Houston Texans.
It's kind of incredible. He continues to ascend. Still hasn't thrown an interception. Felt like he was like almost playing a perfect game in that game I watched today. The first drive they scored a touchdown, I think it was. They had their touchdowns called back by like three different penalties.
Yeah, I got two different notifications on my phone for a touchdown.
So, and he just kept making the right play on that drive over and over to the point where they scored a touchdown at the end of that drive.
Didn't get flustered
as many times as they tried to take it away from them. So, yeah, he's been incredibly impressive. My off mic, we talked a little bit this week about Mr. Nico Collins.
Yeah, we did. I was trying to. My team is in dire straits right now. We are 1-5, and I know we're only 3 weeks in, but we play with a median score. So if you don't meet the median, you get another loss.
It really accelerates things quickly when you're like, "Whoa!" I was 1-3 after 2 weeks, and I was like, "Damn."
I am not feeling great about my team. So I put Garrett Wilson on the block. And I was looking to get a couple picks and included Nico Collins in there. Now, you've got Tank Dell. Nothing against Tank Dell. I know he blew up the week before, but you're like, Nico Collins, he's not doing anything.
I saw Nico Collins in there, and I put my foot down, and I was like, this is not a real guy. You can't trade for this guy. What a fluke. I called him Terrace Marshall.
He's a big-bodied receiver, and he's the number one receiver for the Texans. He went 7 receptions, 168 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
What did Tank Dell have?
I don't know, but he doesn't show up on my box score.
Yeah, so that I kind of had a feeling pretty early on that my talk was going to backfire, and it did.
It did, certainly. It only cost me a couple picks, and But no, I honestly... It
still feels a little fluky to me, but he is a legit guy this season, it seems like.
Well, he's the number one in Houston. With how Houston is playing, I don't anticipate them getting like a super high pick. Actually, they don't even have a first-round pick anyways because they traded it to Arizona. So
they have no incentive to lose.
Yeah, they don't have to get that big-name receiver or whatever that might be coming out or anything like that. So, like, Nico Collins is the number one. He's got the size. He's got the frame to be on the outside. So that's why I was thinking along the lines of he's already got good chemistry with Stroud. He's the number one. He's probably not going anywhere the next couple of years. At worst,
I'm curious about the next couple of years. I don't know.
This is his 3rd year, so he's got this year and I think one more year.
So I am curious, but yeah, it does seem like Tank Dell is going to be a little bit more boomer bust than all boom. So we'll kind of see, but the Texans offense is starting to look fun. Damian Pierce finally kind of started going.
Yeah,
they got Dalton Schultz there. He caught a pass.
D'Amico Ryans is doing a great job with that team.
Yeah.
I mean, you easily could have been like, oh man, they're 0-2 to start the year.
Yeah.
Nothing's really going
Well,
right.
you compare them to the Panthers, where it's like a very similar timeline, similar quarterback draft, and they just kind of got whooped this weekend, and nothing to say there.
Yeah, I mean
Bryce Young did play, I believe, but yeah, not quite as much of a pop off as Stroud has had these first couple of games. So it seems like that may be the direction of those two guys, of which is going to have a bit of a longer stay. But the size with Bryce Young is just a little concerning.
Yeah, Young had 204 yards passing, no touchdowns, no interceptions.
And he's
working
also with a lot less.
Yeah, I was about to say he's working with, not arguably, he is working with a lot less right now. I mean, you've got an aging Adam Thielen who did have a good week last week, but like, can you consistently rely on him? DJ Chark is constantly in and out of the lineup with his own injuries. We already know your beef with Terrence Marshall. And then the running back situation. You got Miles Sanders and then Chuba Hubbard, and it's just like not a lot of firepower. Jonathan Mingo hasn't really panned out right now either. Granted, it's only 4 weeks in, so I'm not labeling him in any way. It's just he hasn't shown those flashes that you were hoping to match up with your rookie quarterback.
Yeah, so it seems like of the two, the Texans may be on a bit of a better trajectory with that. So, yeah, we'll kind of see. Are there any other quick hits on NFL that we want to touch on?
I mean, my main surprising team so far, the Bengals. That's exactly what I was getting to. 27-3 loss to the Tennessee Titans. Tannehill had 240, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Henry had 22 carries, 122 yards. It looked like Tractocito season.
Yeah, he had a beast mode highlight. I definitely did see.
Yeah, and he had a touchdown. But alarming that the Bengals are they are so close to being 0-4.
They're struggling offensively.
Which is shocking because 2 or 3 years ago, this was the team to beat offensively. Like, obviously the Chiefs are up there, but, like, they have the weapons. They have T. Higgins, who's, like, your number 2, number 3 receiver. You've obviously got Jamar Chase, who's your number 1. You've got a explosive running back and Joe Mixon back there. And then you've got...
Like they fixed their offensive line issues at least a little bit.
A little bit. At least they've attempted to each year. Like that year they went to the Super Bowl, they were not good offensive line-wise.
No.
And they tried to improve upon it the next year. Struggled early on. And then even this past offseason, they tried to improve upon it. But, man, nothing was looking good for that team.
And it's hard to know how much is the injury with Burrow, but... can't be this much, it seems like. It scored as much as Mac Jones' offense did.
Yes, and calf is like you're using that back leg, that calf to push off and throw sometimes. So like I get that it affects Joe sometimes, but you're 1-3 in a division that
the Ravens are kind of starting to run away with. I mean, the Browns with the strong defense maybe could do it. It seems like kind of the Steelers are in a similar.
Yeah, I mean Baltimore's 3-1, Steelers are 2-2, along with the Cleveland Browns, and then the Bengals are 1-3. Like, I have a feeling where you just gave Joe Burrow a large sum of money. That say you fall to 1-4, and his calf is still not right. Like, I don't want to say it's a lost season, but like, dude, get him a break.
It's getting closer and closer. Yeah.
Like you.
Who do they play next week?
Let's bring up that schedule. But yeah, I mean, like it's
the Cardinals.
That has to be a get right game.
That has to be a get right game.
Has to be.
Although they beat the Cowboys, but yeah, if you lose that, it starts to you're starting to look down the barrel of a lot of losses and not so many wins.
And you know what? You've already had a season where you lost Joe Burrow for more than half the year when he tore his ACL. I think it was his second year in the league.
Yeah.
Why not? Just give him. I'm not even saying give him the full season. Just give him like 2 or 3 more weeks to rest up and really become the best version of himself.
Yeah, because you're not going to win without that, and then you do start looking at what about the next 5 years? Like we actually do need this guy to be right.
Exactly.
For us to even.
You just gave him all that money. You signed him for the long-term extension. You need him right.
And with already one major injury, you start to wonder. But then there's another. Who is their backup quarterback?
Jake Browning, a guy who
he hasn't really played.
I think he's got like 1 year of experience.
Again, it's like, is that really? If this team coming into the year had playoff contention hopes, and you don't really have a backup plan at all, do you?
No.
Why is it? I don't understand how it's the Colts who have Gardner Minshew, the Colts who don't care if they win a single game this year, have the best backup quarterback in the league. All these other teams whose quarterbacks are already going down who want to compete have random rookies who've never played.
It doesn't make a lot of sense.
I don't really get it. Minshew would be a fantastic backup for the Bengals to have. They could play him for a month, let Joe Burrow get better.
Yeah, because he's at least going to keep you competitive in games. Even when he was on those bad Jacksonville teams before Trevor Lawrence got there and he was a starting quarterback behind Nick Foles, I think is what it was.
He's slinging it.
Yeah, he did a great job. He kept them in games. You were competitive. You were within striking distance every time. You can't ask much more for a guy who's not your regular starter to be doing that.
And that Bengals offense does not work without a quarterback.
No. Yeah.
I don't know. Some other running teams or a Shanahan offense, you kind of don't really need a quarterback that often. Until
you just need to make sure you can get the ball to somebody.
Yeah, you just hand it off to Debo or do some weird pitch or direct to McCaffrey. But the Bengals, if you want to get it to those receivers, you need a guy who can get it there. And if Burrow's out, it doesn't sound like you have any options. So always very weird, some of these situations. But yeah, it seems like the Bengals are in a bit of a struggle situation. We'll kind of see if they can pick it back up.
Any other teams or games you want to discuss? That kind of wraps everything up for me. I mean, there is still the one more game that's tonight, Seahawks-Giants. I'm not super engaged into that one.
I will say
I need Kenneth Walker to get points, so I for sure don't lose.
Yeah, fantasy-wise, I'm going to be sweating it out, hoping that the Seahawks kicker doesn't have a night, who had 20 points last week. I need him to be under 13, I think. So it's going to come
just have Walker score all those touchdowns. Only extra points for him.
It's going to come down right to the end. I already know it. The only other thing that I think I wanted to mention in the Saints-Bucks game and related to fantasy, Alvin Kamara came back this week.
Oh, yep, that's big news.
Started in my league. Had an interesting scoreline, to say the least, that sparked a bit of a discussion in our fantasy league. He had 11 carries, 51 yards. He had 13 catches for 33 yards. Yeah, you heard that right.
13 catches for 33 yards.
13 catches, 33 yards. I don't know what that average is, 3? 2.5?
If that, I can't do it on my phone.
I mean, Derek Carr is the king of the check down, obviously. Check down artist. But it basically kind of led us into a bit of a discussion.
It's 1.1 year. It's a little over that. It's
I was constantly watching him check down to the line of scrimmage and step out of bounds and get a yard or something. It was not much. Okay. Not much going on. But basically, it sparked whether or not we should be. What is more viable, points per reception, or there's this new thing, points per first down, which has been floated in a couple fantasy podcasts I listened to, which I didn't know is actually an option, which is a scoring option in our Sleeper app. So I'm kind of curious. We'll see.
Is that going to change previous scores then? Because if it's not going to help me, then I don't care.
We wouldn't do it this season. We would wait and see and talk about it in the off season. But I do find it to be very interesting. Basically, I mean, it's cases like this Kamara case where he had 13 catches for 34 yards. He ended up with 16 points in our league for a total of about 80 yards. So he kind of doubled his points just by catching checkdowns for 0 yards.
Yeah. Ours is half PPR too.
It's half, so it makes it a little better. I mean, God, he would have been a PPR monster and done absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it does kind of make you wonder. Basically, there's points per first down is what it sounds like.
What is that scored out to? Is that a full point? Is it a half a point? Quarter of a point?
One of those two. It would probably either be one or half.
Okay.
I don't know. I've never actually done it with this before, so it's hard to know is 1 point super OP or is a half point a little better. But it is interesting to think about because that's actually more actionable good football plays is when you're catching a pass and it goes for a first down rather than you on 3rd and 9 you caught a pass for 1 yard on a check down and it didn't do anything. It's but you still got in full PPR 1.2 points or whatever. So, I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I could see, obviously right now the fantasy world is all kind of PPR or not.
Yeah.
This isn't really within the discussion. I could see this kind of moving more into the mainstream as we go on because it actually does reward good football plays a little better. And the more of these cases where somebody catches 10 passes for nothing and it's kind of annoying that they get points for that, I don't know. I think it could end up swaying the other direction, and I think that could be kind of interesting to see because I think that could be good. Because you want to root for good football plays and get points for those.
Yeah, I mean, like getting a half a point, you only get one yard or whatever. You get 0.6 overall, but if it goes for a first down, I mean, that could really.
Yeah, I mean, if you catch a 6-yard pass on 3rd and 4, now you're getting 1.6 points or something, and it's like if they hadn't caught that pass, that drive's over. So it's like you actually are rewarding a very important play within that series for the offense. So I'm
not against it. It's just a new like quirk to put in there.
It changes everything because then it's like I think a lot of
cases, even on like rushing then too. Is it only on catching?
I think
so. Like your running back gets a carry for 3 yards but picks up a first down.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's 0.8.
Yeah.
Right.
But,
something along those lines. I mean,
half, yeah.
Yeah,
which you would want to reward that kind of stuff. Yeah, rushing first downs right in here.
Interesting. I mean, I'm not against it. I think it
even passing first down. That might be a little too OP. You're passing.
Maybe just do the receiver and
but that
and the running back
that, and then it's like I think a lot of leagues are either or as far as points per reception or points for first down, or would it just be another additive thing? Like we have points for a 1-point bonus for a 100-yard game. Is it?
We also have like
or is it either or? So I don't know. But it's
what if you did it like? No, never mind. That'd be too difficult. I was gonna say like if you got like 4 first downs, like that equaled a point or something like that. Or
I mean, you could basically just have it be like 0.25 for a first down or something, or 0.5 for a first down, like we do with punt return yards or something, where we have to kind of bump them down.
Feels like every year there's a new tiny thing to tweak around in points.
There usually is. I think this is the first year we've gone a while without something coming up.
I know we've discussed it in the chat.
Like, oh, this is weird, man. We should move this or that. Like, one that's come up a lot is like points for defenses as far as forced fumbles and fumble recoveries. I think now it's like 2 for a forced fumble, 1 for a recovery.
Should be the opposite.
I kind of maybe felt the same yesterday when I was playing a defense that forced a fumble but didn't pick it up, and I was like, they just got 2 points for ostensibly nothing? What? Why is this happening?
Yeah, that definitely should be flipped, because you should be more rewarded for getting the fumble recovery than necessarily the fumble in itself.
I agree, but I think at the time our argument was like it's more impressive as a defensive play to force a fumble than to just because if you just fumble a snap and they pick it up, it's like that's so I don't know. We've gone back and forth.
How often does that happen?
I think it happened to one of the teams last night. Didn't somebody fumble a snap and they picked it up? Zach Wilson, didn't he lose the game that way? That Chiefs game? I don't remember.
I don't know.
I remember him giving a press conference saying he lost.
Was it from under center he dropped it?
I think it was a shotgun.
That's a little different.
Well, I don't know. But yeah, it's curious.
Yeah. Let's go into America's favorite segment since we're on fantasy right now.
Yeah.
Fantasy Sandbag is going in for a 3rd week now. First 2 weeks,
Or is it the 4th?
Oh yeah, that's right. I only have 3 on here. You did the one last week.
Maybe we should do that real quick.
Last week's scores?
Well, I don't know if we know who won.
You did. You won.
Okay, that's all we need to say.
Yeah. No, you won that one because that was when I had Mostert for like 37 something points or whatever.
Before the Monday game, so just
correct.
Close that.
Yeah, no. So
week 4.
Week 4 coming into this week, I had 1 win. Ray had 2. I use win in quotation marks because you want the lower score. You want to have the worst score. So the first week I had 67.32. Ray had 84.44. The next week I had 94 points. Ray only had 85, so he won that one. Week 3 was a gajillion points because I picked Raheem Mostert on my team, and Ray had, I'm assuming, somewhere in the 80s because he's been very consistent like that.
70 to 92.
Even worse. Okay.
This week is much lower on both sides.
Yes, very much so. So to go through our teams, I've had to make a change only because Irv Smith was a late scratch for last Monday night's game for the Bengals. Yeah. So I picked up Kylan Granson, the tight end for the Colts.
Kylan? Or is it just Kyle?
It's Kylan. I have it right here. It says Kylan on our little thing right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I could have totally butchered that too. I'm not totally sure.
I mean, I'm just going to look at the same thing you are, but I thought it was Kyle.
You're going to have to scroll back quite a bit because I just did it from the pickup thing. All right, so our teams, though. I've got Baker, James Conner, Raheem Mostert, Juju Smith-Schuster, Allen Robinson, Kylan Granson.
That's crazy.
Browns defense, and then
Will
Lutz. Chris Lutz? Will Lutz?
Will Lutz. I definitely know Will. That's Will Lutz.
That's Will Lutz.
Lutz
Okay,
is his
Lutz
son.
for the kicker for the Broncos right now. For you had Russell Wilson, Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift, Darnell Mooney, Michael Thomas, Kyle Pitts, the Cardinals, and then Carlson, the kicker for the...
Real quick, did you see Jonnu Smith's scoreline for this weekend?
No, but I saw that he had a huge reception. He had like 80 yards overall.
Yeah,
though.
he had I think he had 90 yards or something. Kyle Pitts did 3 points.
Nothing.
It's so
Incredibly
so bad.
underutilized.
It's crazy.
A waste of space. And not him as a person, just like out on the field, like they're not utilizing him. It's what I mean by that.
I did not see him. I didn't see much of his Toy Story toy running around.
No, I didn't either.
I didn't see much.
It's
I saw him
crime.
once when Ritter threw a pick over the middle because he's trying to throw it. That was it.
Both of our leading scorers this week were our quarterbacks. Nothing too surprising there, except for the fact that Baker Mayfield continues to win with the Bucs.
He's a gamer.
23.7 points. Overall, though, he was the only guy I had reach double digits. You had one guy, DeAndre Swift.
My defense even went negative, and it wasn't enough.
It still was not enough. I had 56 total points. Ray,
Season low.
That is a season low for both of us. And you had 67.28 points.
So I thought it was pretty good.
Normally, yeah, that'd be really good. That would have been our second lowest score ever.
Yeah, the Mostert pick finally did come through for you this week.
Yeah, because
3.7, multiple
Achane,
fumbles,
yeah.
Achane went off.
Yeah.
It's really your receivers that I just cannot even get close to being badass.
Juju, I don't think has gotten over 5.3 at all.
Horrendous pickup by the Patriots.
Allen,
I knew it in the moment.
Oh yeah.
Why are we getting this over Jacoby?
Yeah, he's
going to be a disaster.
Big name, big name.
And it's a disaster.
Allen Robinson has declined, as kind of we all
Incredible
predicted
pick.
would be for the Steelers.
Yeah. Incredible pick.
Yeah, and then my tight end was just a gamble. You know, you never know how that's going to end up. I wish Irv Smith wasn't hurt because he would be a lock right now on my team.
Granson outscored Kyle Pitts, just to be clear.
Yeah, he had 3-4. Kyle Pitts had 3-1. The defense-wise, though, you said you went negative. The Browns actually had a bad week as well. They went 5.46. Cannot wait for that bye week so I can change my defense.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
And then the kickers are just the kickers. Lutz actually had a good day because he came back against the Bears and had a nice long field goal.
Both these kickers outscored my real kicker. Okay, cool. It's been tough with Justin Tucker this week. I actually think I realize why now. I saw a stat today coming in that the Ravens' red zone touchdown percentage is 80% this season.
Oh wow! So
he just doesn't have a chance to kick. He's just kicking. He kicked 4 extra points. That was his weekend.
I was gonna say I've got Moody as my regular kicker, and this is the first week he didn't have a field goal. It was all extra points. Still got me 5 points though, so I'll take it.
They score a lot, but yeah, you got me there. I think we're 2-2 now.
Yeah, we each have 2. We'll check in on the injury situation. I don't think anybody got injured from any of our teams, but this is the first week of bye weeks though, coming up, so that's something to keep an eye on.
Who's on bye? I think it was 1 or 2 teams. Actually, I don't really know how to look that up.
NFL bye week for all 32 teams. I got it right here. Week 5. Could not have come at a better time. I get to pick a new defense. The Browns are off.
Oh, no.
Along with the Chargers, Seahawks, and the Buccaneers. So I need to pick a new quarterback.
Oh, wow. That could be good, too.
I need to pick a new quarterback, and I need to pick a new defense. Otherwise,
I don't think I have any of those.
I am good, and I'm looking at yours right now. It's Browns, Chargers, Seahawks, and Bucks, and I don't think you have any of those.
Yeah, I kind of...
I'm going to pick...
need to get rid of DeAndre Swift, probably.
I'm going to pick the Bears defense as my new defense.
Oh, wow. Bit of a conflict of interest there.
What are you talking about? The Bears are just atrocious. Did you not see them give up 18 points in the last quarter?
I watched the first half. That was pretty good.
As for my starting quarterback...
Okay, they did have -2 last week.
Yeah.
They are number 31 defense in our league.
I think that's a good one. Good pick for me, then.
I guess that's a good one.
As for QBs...
Ooh. You got to pick a start. Oh, God, there's so many backups starting right now, though.
I won't do that. That's sort of cheap because eventually they're going to not be it's not going to be the starter later on though. I could do Dobbs.
I don't know if you want to do Dobbs.
He's been okay, actually.
He's been pretty good.
Yeah. Man, who do
Case by case basis, so you can see.
Yeah, I'm on the fence right now. I don't know who else I would get to pick up.
Don't pick Mac Jones.
I won't. I feel like I have to highlight everybody in our.
That would be a good pick.
In our fantasy league right now, so I can see.
Ritter maybe.
Ritter wouldn't be a
Derek
bad
Carr.
one.
Kirk Cousins threw a pick 6, but he's also the number 1 quarterback before this week.
Mm-hmm.
Tannehill's been terrible, but he's such a good coach that it kind of gets him through.
Do I pick Zach Wilson? Do I really expect him to be
slinging it, man?
Yeah, that was 1 week.
He's number 13 on the year. He's got a lot of weapons around him.
What about Tannehill?
Tannehill's terrible. That would be a good one.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Tannehill.
Yeah,
he never does. So my new team with my new selections, Tannehill now takes over for my quarterback.
Oh man!
Because of the bye week, and then the Bears defense takes over for the Browns. I really spoke that one into existence.
Yeah, you really did. Those are some good pickups. I feel like.
The following week, Packers and Steelers. I'm gonna have to drop A-Rob.
Oh, thank God.
I don't. I'm gonna have to find a new guy.
Oh, I need that.
And then hopefully, who's the next one after that? Oh, damn. I was hoping maybe it would be the New England, and then I could just switch Juju for A-Rob. It's not, though. It is not. So next week, Packers and Steelers will change. I don't think you got to change your kicker.
Great.
And then I'll have to change A-Rob. But yeah, so that's Fantasy Sandbag. Another week continues. Yeah. I'm actually having a lot of fun with this just because it's sort of actively rooting against these guys, but in a fun way, not anything malicious.
At least Juju can be on a winning team in some sense.
In some sense, right?
Being just terrible.
All right, that's a bit of our fantasy talk. Now we head over to one of our favorite segments, the Nerd Corner.
Hell yeah.
Last week we talked about how none of these Disney Plus shows actually use the character in the title.
They keep their eye on the ball.
Still haven't seen any of Ahsoka yet myself.
One left tomorrow.
One left? So perfect. Can't wait to binge it
watch the whole thing.
Next time. After I watch Rebels.
Be ready. Yeah, you gotta watch 5 seasons of Rebels, 7 seasons of Clone Wars. So
I'll get right on that.
Please do.
Yeah. What's on the docket for our Nerd Quarter this week?
I got a couple options. So I'll give you 3 options. You can choose which one you want me to talk about.
Okay.
The first one has to do with this new movie, The Creator, is coming out.
Yep. Okay, the AI one, yeah.
Sci-fi movie. So I've got a bit of a rant almost on these kind of sci-fi movies coming out.
Okay.
That's all I'll say. The other 2 options are leftovers from last year.
The One Piece.
Last week. The One Piece live action, which is a whole thing, but I am an encyclopedic knowledge for some of that stuff. So I could talk you through some of that. As well as what I have is sort of a tough game of the year choice, which I'm now realizing might be just the year of games as well. This might be the best year for video games of all time.
There's a new space game coming out for Xbox I'm pretty excited about.
What's
that? Can't remember what it is right now.
It's not Starfield, is it? That's out.
I don't know. Is it out?
It is out.
Well, that might be the one that I'm talking about, or thinking about at least. I'm a sucker for a good space game. So.
Yeah, Starfield is the Bethesda Skyrim people making a space game.
Yep, that's exactly what it is. Yep.
Oh yeah, it's out. So yeah, do you want to hear
September 6th? Yeah.
Sci-fi movies, games, or One Piece live action?
I'm actually really interested in The Creator. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Because you and I briefly had a conversation about this where one person reviewed it as one of the more original scripts that's come across lately. But granted, there aren't very many original scripts that come out anymore.
I'm glad that's what the jumping off point for this is. And in a sense, I guess I get what they're saying. Because they're saying this is not a franchise or a thing or a sequel. This is a new original idea. But also this is the least original sci-fi idea of all time.
I think everybody's always had the idea of AI though. I mean, like iRobot was one of those.
Yes. Specifically though, I guess I mean, based on what I can see from the trailers, this looks to me exactly like it is the. I don't know if this is exactly a term, but it's sort of like the lone survivor and the cub kind of storyline, where there is some downtrodden dystopian main character, and they have to go on a mission to get this special child or some kind of super child to this location to save the world or whatever.
Almost sounds like Children of Men as well.
Well, that's one of the movies that it is exactly like.
Okay.
We have a list of these movies that it is just all of these movies have the exact same premise, and it's Children of Men with the society that can no longer have kids and him trying to get across
get the one woman that's pregnant. She has to get Spot X.
There's obviously Logan, the recent Wolverine movie with him and the young child who is special, and he's trying to get them. It's always ends up kind of being a road trip movie between these two, and they start off against odds, and then they learn to love each other, and at the end, you know, a lot of times the older guy kind of sacrifices himself or whatever. Obviously, Logan, Children of Men, Mandalorian, Season 1, Grogu. Yeah. Also Pedro Pascal, Last of Us, same thing. Ellie, she can save the cure or whatever.
Yeah.
She's immune, I mean, I guess I should say. And they're road tripping across the country to try to save humanity. I mean, Terminator 2, like, same exact thing. So it's interesting that this just keeps being like the default sci-fi narrative, and so to me, it's like I see this creator movie coming out, and I'm like, kind of interested. Obviously, the visuals look kind of great because it's Gareth Edwards, the guy who made Godzilla and Rogue One. But it's like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, we're doing this again. I bet you it comes that way because you can add, even though it's the same plot in a sense, you can add all these different elements. Yeah.
Because of the world that it is in. Where like,
I mean, you just keep
some of those space ones.
The little girl is AI.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is.
Yeah. Is she part human too? Is that what the deal is? Or she's AI but she doesn't want to be bad or something?
Well, what is a computer human? Is it where is a robot become a conscious? This is the other sci-fi idea that is exactly original that it is built on. So it's tough for me to get super excited to go see this movie. I guess. It
sort of sounds like man, what was that Johnny Depp movie, like Transcendence or something like that, where he puts his mind into the computer and it's like, well, is it really him or
something? I mean, that's.
Is it him? Is it the computer?
The idea of robot intelligence increasing in AI and what is human, what is not human, that is like the first original sci-fi idea, and it has been repeated 1,000 times since then. So that in combination with this kind of lone cub kind of story, I think The Road is also like that, which I haven't read or seen, but
I've seen The Road.
I'm pretty sure that's kind of the same dealio. So I'm a little, I don't know, this feels very much like a sort of generic 6 or 7 probably don't need to see, but I don't know. It immediately made me kind of look back and see like, oh my gosh, this is.
Is there any appealing aspect to it that would make you go?
The thing that's appealing is the visuals. Everything I've heard is that it looks incredible, especially for the budget, which is like $80 million, which is
that's pretty low for that type of a movie. I feel
like a big blockbuster with sci-fi and all this stuff, and so almost the only allure to it is to go and see it in theaters, and then maybe I would have like kind of an all right time. I mean, I like the lead actor, John David Washington, I think his name is. The thing that worries me is that this movie is also written by Gareth Edwards, I'm pretty sure, and he very much seems like one of those directors who should not maybe write his movie because he's focused so much on the visuals that if you compare him like Rogue One, which I still have a lot of problems with, but that was written by Tony Gilroy, the Andor guy, as well as some other people, so he was able to focus on the visuals while other people were able to focus on the story. It seems like that may be more his niche, whereas this is all kind of his original idea and his writing, and I think maybe ended up kind of falling back on some easy cliches so that he could maybe focus on some of the visuals or something. I don't know.
So, well, maybe. I mean, do you know if he's written any other movies? I have not seen if he's written anything.
He's written before he got Godzilla. He might have written Godzilla. I don't know. There's not much writing in Godzilla. It's impossible.
I only ask because it's just like for him, like you know him as the visual guy.
Detective work.
You know he's the visual guy, and he's just trying to round out his portfolio where maybe the writing isn't as crisp this one, but he learns of it. But there's enough that drives the story or the plot that it's not going to deter you too much to where somebody would give him another opportunity.
Right. So the movie that got him Godzilla, I wasn't sure if he wrote, but he did, is called Monsters, which I'm pretty sure is basically about like a Godzilla situation, but it's just about some people.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't seen it, but what I heard of it when he got the Godzilla job was like it does a really good job of depicting the scale of these things versus human size.
Okay.
But so he wrote that, and it's got some decent ratings and decent scores. But then again, that is also maybe not a movie that needs to be super overwritten. If it's just kind of that survival story or whatever it might be. So yeah, I'm pretty hesitant. I don't think I'll see it in theaters, which means I probably won't.
Won't see it in general.
I probably won't see it in general, but I don't know. I've got enough kind of other sci-fi stuff that I can go to, like even this new Starfield game. So I'm not too worried. But I don't know. I'm glad that it's out there and it looks good for its budget, and hopefully people see it. I'm just a little burnt out on this.
The AI or the
even less so that, because obviously that.
The getting person from point A to point B.
It's just I'm a little bit good on that, and it's like the magic child. We gotta get him from here to there, and it's like, all right, we're doing this again. All right.
I feel like you're gonna be really disappointed over the next year and a half, just because the writer's strike just ended, and you're probably gonna get a lot of garbage.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with all the streaming stuff out there now, there's no shortage of garbage.
That's true.
It's just filtering through it and finding what you like. But yeah, that's kind of what I had for this week, and we'll see. We'll see.
Well, I mean, that's kind of all we have for this episode. Do you have anything else you want to discuss?
No, we'll save the other stuff for the future.
Next week we will do One Piece. Yeah, no. Next week we'll do One Piece, because that's something I have absolutely no idea about. I just know that it was an animated show and now it's live action.
Yeah, that'll be fascinating, because it's a fascinating world that I've fallen into. I can't stop. But yeah, that's all I got for this week.
All right, that's Ray Bradley. I'm Brian Slyke. Thanks for tuning in. Another episode of Sportslandia, brought to you by the Next Professional Athlete platform. We'll catch you next week.